Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Ignorant Intellectual on Media. Today, I thought we'd take a little bit of a turn from the previous videos that I've done, which are mostly on film, on movies, DVDs, Blu-rays, so on and so forth. And I thought we'd switch to music today. So it does relate to film in a way, in that if you see behind me, you see these DVD towers, CD, well, they're DVD, Blu-ray, and CD towers, all right? Um, with the Blu-rays and the DVDs, they have little holes in them to put the shelves. You can arrange the shelves as you wish, um, and so there's 8 sections for a DVD collection, but then you can arrange it so that you can get 10 sections for a CD collections. That's what I did with 12 of these. I've had, I don't know how many I have of them. They're all over the place, like probably 40 of these shelves maybe. Um, do you want me to count? Okay, let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10, 11, 12, 23, 30, 36, 36 and 12. And there's 4 more upstairs, so 36 is 40 and 12. It's 52. I got 52 of these in my house, if I counted correctly. So, and of the 52, 12 of them hold my CD collections, my CD collection. All right. So I have my CD collection on the shelves. It was broken up into pop, rock, indie, punk, that kind of thing. And then actually I separated punk rock and hip hop and jazz and blues and jazz I put together. But what happened was I collected so many movies that they're starting to pile up on the floor. So since I don't really use my CDs, I'll explain to you why in a second. Since I don't really use my CDs, I figure, okay, my expanding movie collection will need to overtake my CDs because I just don't have any more room to put any more towers or shelves or anything, right? So, uh, so what I did was I started taking my whole CD collection off those shelves and replacing them with DVDs and Blu-rays and so on and so forth. So so they're in a box. They're in a bunch of boxes actually because there's so many of them. Uh, and I thought before I put them in the closet, I thought I'd go through them all as a fun thing on the channel since it is the ignorant intellectual on media. So I intend to cover music as well as film and anything else that comes across my fancy, whether it's comic books or video games or probably more regular books than comic books. I used to collect a lot of comic books, but I got rid of my collection when I was in my 20s. I needed to pay my rent, so out they went, and that was left a very bad taste in my mouth, and I haven't collected comics ever since. Because when you're young, you move a lot, and if you had, I don't know how many comics I had. It was in the thousands at that time because I worked at a comic book store back in the 80s when I was young, when I was like 14, 15, 16, somewhere around there. 16, yeah, probably 16. Uh, because I'd go there and buy comics off. It was a small comic shop in Montreal. Uh, uh, do you live in Montreal? Do you remember the comic shop that used to be on DeCarry, just close to Côte-Vertu and DeCarry back in the 80s? There was a comic book shop. Well, if you went in there, you might have seen me. I would volunteer there basically. I wasn't actually working. I was volunteering there, and the guy at the end of each week would just let me have my choice of comics. Then I would just be grabbing comics left and right. I had so many of them, right? So I would actually get two. I'm digressing against this, but anyways, it's an interesting story. Um, I would get 2 copies. I would get one copy that I would read, and then I would get a second copy that I would protect and put in my collection as an archive, right? So I had a lot, but then I ended up moving out, and I got stuck on rent, and out it went. And man, I did not get a good amount of money for that collection. The guy that owned another comic shop, which was further up to Cary, right where this um, right at the end, just before this, you have the split, you have the Cary Expressway, and then you have the split up above right at the end of that split, I think near Queen Mary, if I remember correctly, the street, there was another comic book shop, and that guy bought my comics off of me, and I paid only like 3 months rent with the comics that I had. So, I mean, he was buying them probably for like a twentieth of what they were worth. And every time I went into that comic book store after, I would see my collection in there, hanging on the wall or in the in the bins for like 5 times the amount that he bought it off me, or 10 times the amount that he bought it off me. And I never really frequented that store very much after that. And the other guy closed his store, the one that was closer to Côte d'Alsou, and I didn't work in. Anyways, left a bad taste in my mouth, so I haven't really collected comics since. But I did find a few years back um, a complete collection of Iron Fist, which was my favorite comic when I was growing up. I liked Iron Fist. He had a very short print run, drawn by John Byrne, and then he joined up with Power Man, which was a fledgling comic at that time, and so uh, at issue number 50, and then they went on to do a whole bunch of issues after that as Power Man and Iron Fist, right? And so I collected all those. Anyways, I have all of Iron Fist comics, but they're the only comics I own, and I don't really know much about comics of today, so I probably won't be going into much comics on this channel unless I get into it again. But like I said, collecting comics kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. Anyway, so but this is about music. So anyway, so I took my music library off my shelves because I don't really use it. And the reason why I don't really use it is um, because I don't really listen to much music in my house. All right, I have a son that's running around watching TV all the time, so that you need a quiet place to listen to music, um, and so he occupies everywhere, and he's always watching the TV or watching YouTube on the TV or other things on the TV. So you can't really listen. Where I listen to my music is in my car. So I work out of my car a lot, and I'm driving around my city a lot, and that's where I listen to the music. So what I've done is I don't buy pirated stuff. I don't download torrents or any of that kind of thing. I want to get my music library legally. Okay, um, so what I do is I go around and find CDs basically and records. I have a bunch of records as well, um, but mostly CDs, because what I do with the CD is I transfer it into a digital file, and then I put it on a flash drive, and then I play it in my car. All right, so I'll take a 32 gig flash drive, I'll fill it up with the music that I have on CD. Um, it turns out to be around, I think I'm up to my 12th flash drive now with the music that I've collected so far. I think I'm up to 1232. So it's like thousands of albums. So I have thousands of CDs. Anyway, so I thought, so as I'm taking them, anyways, I boxed them all and I'm going to put them in my closet. But before I do that, I thought maybe I'd go through them. It would be a fun exercise. And maybe uh, you'll get a love for the music that I love. Now, with thousands of CDs, um, you're going to get a pretty good overview of music from like the 1950s up until the 2000s or whatever. So you should get a pretty good education of what CDs are out there if you collect CDs, and what music. I know most people are are on iTunes or Spotify, and they can get whatever album they want. But many of these CDs, I'm not saying a large amount of these CDs, but many of these CDs aren't on Spotify or iTunes, right? So um, I just looked through some of the Canadian albums I have, and I looked on Spotify, and about 10% of all the Canadian albums that I have um, aren't on Spotify at the time that I looked. They could be now, or some of them could be off, and some of them could be on. But at the time that I looked through my Canadian music, see, that's another thing. Uh, when I looked through my Canadian music, some of it wasn't on Spotify. Okay, so you can't really, just like the streaming services put a lot of movies on online that you can stream, and TV shows that you can stream, you're not getting all of them. All right, especially if you like retro stuff where you go back in time and you want to watch or get older stuff. A lot of that stuff goes off off the servers, and you don't have access to it, right? So having physical media is all about access, all right? So when you get a CD, or when you get a movie, or when you get a physical book, all right, um, you have access to that at any time that you want. If you want to go listen to it, you can. You want to go watch it, you can. You want to go read it, you can. You don't have to worry about whether there's an ebook and they're not showing it anymore, or sorry, they're not selling it anymore, or you know the free services that you get ebooks from go down, or the streaming services that you use don't have the movies that you want, or the streaming services that give you music don't have the music you want. The physical, you never have to worry about whether you can listen to the music that you want to listen to, or the movies and so on that you want to when you have the actual physical media. The only issue is space. All right. So talking about space, that's why I took them off the shelf so I can expand my movie library. And so I thought I'd go through them. Now, when I boxed them, I took them off the shelves in alphabetical order, because I put them all in alphabetical order by artist or band. All right. But when I box them, they get mixed up a little bit. So I have one box that has most of A, B, and most of C in it, but the A is at the bottom of the box, and the C is at the bottom. As you're putting it in, you start off with the A's will be at the bottom, and the top of the box is C. So I'm going to do that box first. And what I'll do is I'll do maybe 10, 20 at a time, and we'll see how it goes, see if it's fun or not. And you'll get to see my collection, which is a pretty friggin' large collection of CDs, and you'll get to see what's out there. And maybe you'll be introduced to some music that you didn't know existed or you weren't sure of. I will point out what music I really like. Now, a lot of my collection I haven't listened to because, like I said, there's like 14 uh, flash drives of 32 gigs. Now, if you think of 32 gigs, all right, and you think of one album being anywhere between 100 and 200 megabytes, you can see how many albums you can fit on one 32 gig. It's like, I don't know how many. You do the calculation, but it's a lot. All right. It takes me 3 to 4 months to go through one of them, right? Depending on how often I'm in the car. So right now, I transferred them all almost 2 years ago, and I think I'm only on the third. I think I'm only on the third flash drive. So maybe it takes me longer. Maybe it takes me 6 or 7 months to get through one of the flash drives, right? Because it holds so much information, right? Anyway, so I figure I go through the CDs. You get to see what CDs exist, what music is on them, and maybe you'll get introduced to some music that you didn't know about, or maybe you'll get to know the music that you like and see there's other people out there that like the music that you like, and maybe you can subscribe, give a thumbs up if you like it. Anyway, so a lot of this will be, it's going to be over a bunch of different genres of music. So, but because I packed them in boxes in a way, like I separated my collection into, um, folk and rock and indie rock and all those variations of rock and folk are in one section. Jazz and blues are in another section. Hip hop is in another section, and punk rock is in another. So what you're going to see through the videos is you're going to see a certain genre of music being shown. It's not going to be jumping around much because, like I said, when I box them in order. So the first box is a large box. It has the music that I have on in rock in all of its variants, other than punk rock, from A to C. All right. So because C's at the top, we're going to go through probably a lot of the C's first, and then as we work it down, we'll get to the B's and the A's. All right. So it's not going to be totally in alphabetical order, but it's going to be reasonably in alphabetical order when I show you these things. All right. All right. So first, let's do probably the greatest singer-songwriter in Canadian history, and that is Leonard Cohen. All right. His early albums up until 1984's I'm Your Man are just amazing. All right. And then after that, they're good, but people have started to taper off. His early work and his stuff up into the 80s. So his 60s, 70s, and 80s stuff is really good. This is a live album, all right? It's a compilation album of live tracks that came out in 1994, all right? but they're all live tracks of some of his best songs, um, anywhere between the mid '80s to the mid '90s. So, for example, let's say "Hallelujah," which is one of his most famous songs. Um, that one they got from Austin when he did a live show in Austin, uh, Texas, in 1988. All right, so this is all live tracks. There's a good 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 of his best songs: Suzanne, I'm Your Man, Hallelujah, Dance Me to the End of Love, Bird on a Wire. Everybody knows all of his great songs that any fan of Leonard Cohen knows about, knows them. All right, and they're all live versions from different venues between the mid '80s to the mid '90s. Um, it's a very good album, and you can usually find it pretty cheap. All right, so that's Leonard Cohen. All right, I think I have another one of his here as well. Is there a second one? Yeah. Okay, so here's the second one in the Cohen pile, and it's called "You Want It Darker," and this one came out in 2016. All right, so his first album came out in 1969, I think 69. It was called "The Songs of Leonard Cohen." All right, and his last album before his death is this one, and this came out in 2016, and it is called "You Want It Darker." All right, um, my first reaction to "You Want It Darker" was something maybe that he got from the fans saying, "Your music is too. We like your depressing music the best. Why are you making your music so light? Let's make it darker." But it wasn't that. The song is actually, which is the title song for the album, is actually about becoming more and more intimate with the woman that you love by turning down the lights, that kind of thing. So anyway, another great album by Cohen. Anything you get from Leonard Cohen is going to be good. All right. If you like singer songwriters with, um, where there's a references to sexuality, to religion, and the mixing of those two things together, plus philosophy and other things. Um, it's poetry with music. It's he's such a great artist. All right. So anyway, so this is his last album before his death. I think there was another one that he was working on, or he had a bunch of songs that hadn't been put out yet that he was working on at the time. And there was another album that came out after his death that was like a studio album, but this is the last one before he died. And it came out in 2016. All right. And if you notice, it's in plastic. So this is a paper, a paper CD. I don't know if you call it a digipack or whatever. Anyways, it's all made of paper. So anytime I get a CD that is not a jewel case, but a paper case, I always protect it in plastic because it gets wrecked on the shelf all the time, right? Collects dust, every time you take it out or move it around because you're adding other things to your library, it gets bent or ripped or whatever. So I always put them in a plastic bag. They're really good. You can get them off Amazon. They have a seal on the back. So you just pop the thing in, you seal it on the back, and it's basically, it's not super airtight, but the air doesn't really get into it, right? So that's Leonard Cohen. All right. Next up, this is Jason Collette's album, which is called, what is this called? This is called Idols of Exile, and I have not listened to this album. This album is on one of the flash drives that I haven't listened to yet. But I picked this album up, and it's another paper album, right? Another digipack, I guess you call them. So it's in plastic again. I picked this up because Jason Collette is one of the members of Broken Social Scene. And Social Scene is just a really good group, and he was part of Broken Social Scene. Then he went out on his own and did his own thing, and this album is the result. But it also has members from Broken Social Scene, Metric, and some other bands, great Canadian bands, that help him out on this album. So supposedly it's supposed to be really good. It's produced by Howie Beck as well. So we'll see if it's good once I listen to it, but that's the reason why I picked it up, because of his association with Broken Social Scene. All right. Next up is a bunch of three Cowboy Junkies album. Cowboy Junkies album is like a country rock uh, group, uh, led with a female voice. All right. And back in the 80s and 90s, and one of their albums is considered like one of the greatest Canadian albums of all time, and that is that one. It's called The Trinity Sessions, and I think you'll be blown away by this album if you decide that you're gonna search it out, find it, and listen to it. If you like kind of like a country rock influence with a female led singer, um, Margot Timmins is her name. Um, I think you're going to like this. And I have also, so this is their second album. I think this one, which is Pale Sun Crescent Moon, is their fifth. And this is Lay It Down. I think this is their sixth album. So I have their second, fifth, and sixth album. These two I haven't listened to yet. Again, they're on the flash drives, and I will get to them. But this one I've listened to like a few dozen times, and because it was, when you read about music, when you look at your grapevine in the music, start reading stuff, and friends and everything, they suggest things to you. This one is highly, highly regarded and one of the greatest Canadian albums of all time. Okay, so if you want to search out the Cowboy Junkies, find this one first to see if you like them. Next up is Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, another Canadian, which is Neil Young, obviously, with two Americans and a British guy, and they okay. The reason why I like to have this album is a good album. If you've never bought any Crosby, Stills, Nash or Young album, all right, um, this is probably their best selling one, except for Deja Vu, I think. Um, and it's a compilation album, so it has 11 tracks on it, and it has their famous ones: Deja Vu, Teach Your Children, Ohio, Woodstock. They have but basically, this is a compilation album of all their best tracks. But at the time that this was issued, which is in 1974, they had only had two albums, and those two albums put together, plus some other stuff, I think they released only like 22 songs altogether, and 11 of those 22 are on this album. I do not like greatest hits albums, even though I have many of them in my um, library. The reason why I have most of them in my library is either one, um, it's the type of group or artist that has very few songs that I like, but the songs that I do like, I want to have and listen to. So a greatest hits or a best of type of um, album is where you can get those hits usually, or the ones that you like, because they're usually the ones they're the most famous for, and then you don't really have to delve in further into their discography because you know you like a couple of their songs, but you've listened to much of their music, and it doesn't really hit you or anything, but a couple of songs may, so you want to get those songs. So that's one reason. All right. Another reason is that there there's certain greatest hits albums that just outshine the work of the band altogether. All right. So they may have like 10 or 15 albums, but on those 10 or 15 albums, the only good songs are maybe a couple, and the rest you can tell they didn't even try, right? So you'd rather have those two songs. So the best way to get it is through a greatest hits package, and you'll get like anywhere between like 10 to 20 of their songs, and you're good with that, right? You don't need anything more. All right. But this is what's wrong with greatest hits packages, okay? If you're going to put out a greatest hits or best of, and you're a band, all right, from my understanding, the band members didn't like that the record company did put this out, but they were like capitalizing on a reunion of the band. I think the band had broken up or something, and they were going to get back together or something, and so they decided to put this out because the two albums that all this music is basically off were put out already. And anyways, it's like it's a cash grab, right? So record companies are famous for cash grabs. They will repeatedly put out the same music over and over and over and over again, where you'll get somebody, let's say like Louis Armstrong, the great jazz artist. Um, you'll get his stuff over and over. This box set, this box set, that box set, this box set, this album, this album. If they really wanted to do it correctly, they would put out a, you know, a box set that contains all of his albums and his singles work, um, all together in one, and that's what they would put out. All right, and stop screwing around with putting out the greatest, the best of the 40s, the best. It's just ridiculous, but that's how they make money, right? But then you want to be to get all a certain group's music, might go psycho and start buying like 25 different compilation albums from the group, and you don't know why you're doing it, just because it has that group's name on it. Oh, you got to buy it, right? And that's what they're taking advantage of, right? It's like, oh, I'm I'm a huge fan of the Rolling Stones. I have to have all their stuff, and you're just repeatedly buying the same music over and over again because it's packaged different, or five of the songs that were on this album are on this album with three other ones. And anyways, it's just ridiculous how much stuff they put out, the record companies. Anyways, I digress. But the point being is the main reason why I don't like greatest hits albums is because I'd rather have the actual albums themselves. And what record companies do is they'll put out a greatest hits package and never put out the albums themselves again, right? So the only way that you can access that group is to buy a greatest hits album or a best of album. You can't actually get the actual albums, right? So you don't learn anything. You learn what their best individual songs are, but you don't learn what their albums are. You don't learn the music that isn't on the greatest hits uh, package of the album, right? It's just friggin' irritating, right? So, and this is just ridiculous when you only have two albums, then you put out a greatest hits package, right? So, um, but I bought it. So what does that tell you? Anyways, I'm a fan of them, um, and actually, I remember buying this, um, not realizing that. All right, so but after looking at it and playing it and everything, I go, hey, a lot of this music I've heard before on their other albums, and they only had two up to this time. But what's cool is this album cover. All right, do you recognize this album cover? Maybe if you have some Joni Mitchell albums, some of Joni Mitchell albums are the album covers are done by Joni Mitchell. Well, she did this album for Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young because they were friend. She was a friend of the band, so she actually did the album cover. It's pretty cool. All right. So what? Okay. So getting back to the greatest hits, I didn't finish my point. A band should always wait until they have at least five albums before they put a best of or a greatest hits package of. That's my take on it. All right. The reason why is usually, all right. I mean, you get the exceptions, but usually a band will put out an album and there'll be maybe one, two, sometimes three, you know, singles off of that album. But if the album's 12 or 13 or 10 or whatever, like two or three um, will be singles that they put out individually, right? So a CD will have like 12 or more um, tracks on it. So if you think of that, two hits per album, 2 to 3 hits per album, you'll get up to about five when you fill up a greatest hits package with their singles or the best songs that everybody knows, right? So if you're putting out a greatest hits package after only two albums, all right, um, people, people say, at least they should, anyways. Why are you putting out this greatest hits package? You only have two albums. It's just basically all the songs that came off those two albums, like half of them, right? So why not wait until you get 5, 6 albums, then you can get, the best singles off of those albums to make a good greatest hits package. So 5 albums minimum. You can get away with 4 if you're like Michael Jackson or whatever, where like 6 or 7 of them are hits. You know what I mean? Are put out as singles because the albums are so good or whatever. Pop albums. But usually 2, 3 songs per album are worth considering on a greatest hits package. So wait till you put out like 5 albums before you put out a greatest hits package, right? At least my opinion. All right. So speaking of that, here's two by Creedence Clearwater Revival. And Creedence Clearwater Revival is one of those groups that it's difficult to find their individual albums. And basically, they weren't together long enough to have too many of them, anyways. So if you get like this one has 20 of their songs, this one has, I think, 28 of their songs, all right? And basically, this one's that came out in 76, and this one came out in 93. So this one replaces this one. and this one has 20 of their songs, which basically covers every one of their great songs. All right. This one has 28, it looks like, of their songs, which covers even more. So I don't know. I don't even know if CCR had more than 28 songs. This might be like their complete discography in a greatest hits package, right? The best of Creedence Clearwater Revival, and this one is called 20 of their greatest hits. All right. So they're a band that you can get a greatest hits package like one of these off of them. Like maybe you'll get like Willie and the Poor Boy, you know, the song off Willie and the Poor Boy. Is that anyway? So because they weren't together long enough to really put out 5, 6, 8 albums. At least my memory serves me correct. So a greatest hits package is perfect for that band. All right. And so we did that. We did him. Did we do him? He's another guy. He died in a plane crash in 1973, and in 1974 they put this album out, and it's basically all you really need from the guy. All right, he didn't put out a lot of albums, from my understanding, and all of his greatest songs are on this album. So this is a good one to collect to get that gentleman, because like I said, he didn't put out a lot of work. You know, he has Bad Bad Leroy Brown. He has what's the other great hit of his? The one that my personal favorite is Time in a Bottle. Yep, it's here. It's number 5. And you know, all of his good music is on basically this greatest hits package. So we did the Cowboy Junkies, we did Jason Collett, we did Leonard Cohen. Okay, we're done. This is 10 albums, I think. In the C's. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right. So we did the first 10 albums of my CD collection, covering the C's, some of the C's anyways. We'll do some more C's in the next video. I hope you enjoyed this one. Is this something that you like? Leave a comment down below. I'll do one of these videos every few videos, and we'll get through my collection. We'll see a bunch of music that you may enjoy. All right, and I hope you like this video, and I hope you stick around for some more of them. Leave a thumbs up if you liked it, and some comments below if you want to join the channel. Subscribe, and we'll continue our journey together. And please, and thank you for watching these videos. I really appreciate it. All right, bye for now.